Fireside Chat. So it is my distinct privilege and honor to have a session with this particular individual. He's the CEO of Worldwide Technology. My CEO, a great CEO, has been recognized. I know him personally, but I know a lot of you may not. And so what I want to do before I ask Jim Kavanaugh to come to the stage is just share a little bit about the CEO of Worldwide Technology. So Jim is a visionary and inspiring leader. He founded Worldwide Technology in 1990. We've been around for 32 years. He's serving as the CEO. He has steered and led this company throughout all the challenges. Think about it, over the last 32 years. We've been talking about all the challenges over the last 2 or 3 years. Imagine the last 32 years. Started as a technology, as a reseller, grew into a value-added reseller, and now we're a technology solutions provider with a global footprint. We have over 8,000 employees. That's not easy to do. Has created an environment of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Has been recognized. This company has been recognized for 11 years in a row by Forbes magazine as a great place to work for all. Put your hands together for that. A great place to work for all. That's not easy to do. Jim and the culture that he's created here at Worldwide is deeply committed to giving back to the community. Jim's charitable work has also been acknowledged and heralded. He serves as a member of the American Cancer Society's CEO Against Cancer in Missouri. The St. Louis chapter that he led, a $9.1 million capital campaign enabling the organization to renovate and remodel the Hope Lodge in St. Louis. This is a home away from home for patients and their caregivers. Put your hands together for that. Let me just tell you something about that. So the Hope Lodge in St. Louis, you have caregivers, you have patients that when they hear getting care, they have a place to stay, a home away from home. We have something similar in the military, and actually my wife got to participate in one of those homes, and that's a tremendous blessing when you're going through a difficult time. Additionally, Jim supports many local organizations, many national charitable organizations such as the ALS Association, the St. Baldrick's Foundation's Toys for Tots, Cardinal Glennon Junior Achievement, and the United Way. Jim is the co-founder, obviously, of Worldwide Technology, but he played also a professional soccer career. He represented the United States on the men's national team in the 1984 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, and he credits his experience with sports in instilling in him several principles that serve as the core values for WWT today, such as trust, passion, and being a team player. Jim is also an investor and an owner in the MLS franchise here in St. Louis City SC, and the National Hockey League team, the St. Louis Blues. Without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage, señoras y señores, the CEO of Worldwide Technology, Mr. Jim Kavanaugh. Please put your hands together.
What if we could connect people to new possibilities, turn thinking into a way forward, solve problems before they become a problem, and share the future with everyone? We can. At WWT, we connect businesses to technology to make the impossible possible, to reach better decisions faster, to accelerate progress. Together, let's make a new world happen.
Hi, Rick.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, everyone.
So Jim, we have about 160 plus folks in person, and about 675 online. And these are Hispanic professionals from all over the United States and abroad. And we're really celebrating diversity, equity, and inclusion. You have, there's a lot of folks here that may not know you or know a lot about Worldwide Technology. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the company. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you founded the company 32 years ago. So I know some of the challenges that we're facing today, present day, but people can't remember what they were doing 32 days ago, much less 32 years ago. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced 32 years ago, starting a company in St. Louis with a worldwide vision?
Sure. I'll give a couple points, or I guess maybe interesting sound bites, but you know, I could be here for weeks going through the trials and tribulations of starting Worldwide, 32 plus years ago. As Rick mentioned, exciting time that we're in today. The world is moving so fast. There's so many things going on. But if I really look at it and reflect back on starting Worldwide back in 1990 with Dave and one other individual, I would reflect, probably if I knew then what I know now, I'd have stayed at the other job that I had. So I'd put it that way. So there were a lot of things. I would say was learned a lot. Could be fairly naive just in regards to the experience I had and the reality of Worldwide actually succeeding. But there were all kinds of challenges. One, we had another owner in the business who was my boss at that time and someone I worked with at my prior job. And so we basically came up with the business plan. He knew Dave. Then we formulated that business plan. Dave invested $100,000 and we came to Worldwide, started it, and I was literally the first person to actually start. Dave was working with his consulting organization. This other individual is still at the other company, and myself and two individuals came over. We started the business and literally working off 3x5 cards, basically that I wrote up to go start dialing for dollars to Fortune 500 companies was really how we started the business. That being said, fast forward I would say some of the bigger events. One of the other owner that was here at that time, who was my boss, was just not the right person. So this was a really, really challenging time, and that became front and center, I would say, as we continued to work through some really challenging times, but then it became even more aware when he started doing some things that he shouldn't have been doing financially. And so when that was brought to my attention, it really was an opportunity to a certain degree. I have to say that it was becoming a reality that this business was not going to make it with this individual being part of it. And then on top of it, to exacerbate that, some of the things that this individual is doing caused me to work with a friend of mine that just happened to be a corporate attorney, and it said, we've got to get this individual out. So I brought that to Dave and said, this individual has to go. Dave's first response, being Dave and a very nice person, is, no, we can't do that. And I said, well, it's a Friday. We have until Sunday night for you to make that decision, but I can tell you I'm leaving if you don't sign the documents, and we're going to terminate him, and we're going to terminate his wife because this business isn't going to make it. Dave signed the documents, terminated him, terminated the other guy. We had basically $1 million line of credit with the bank. We had the $1 million line of credit tapped to $985,000. And we had basically about $15,000 in receivables. So the bank wasn't happy about that, and there were things going on that I was not responsible for the financial operations at that time. So basically with the termination of the individual, the bank had the bank's options were shut the business down. And this is what I told them. You can either shut the business down and you'll get $15,000 on your $1 million line of credit, which was not a great option. I said, or we have a couple contracts. We have 6 contracts we're working on. I think we will close maybe 3, 4, 5 of these contracts, but you're going to have to give us, 3 months to do that. And when they come in, you're going to need to sign these contracts, and the financing of those contracts, it would require more financing than the $1 million you have to get that going. So all that being said, without going into any more detail, terminated the other owner, got the bank to give us some time, then got the bank to sign those documents and the UCC filings that went along with it, and we started working our way through that process. And the things that I would tell anybody today, if you're starting a business, is one, really think long and hard about who you're going into business with. And that is such a critical part of that, because it's not easy. Marriage is not easy. If you look at things that are going on, there's more people. So you got to work together, and you got to have people you trust, and you want to bring those things together. So I would say that's when you're looking at a business and longevity of Worldwide, and myself and Dave working together to where we are today. It's something that it requires to do that with the right person, because there's a lot of businesses that, as I say, and I'll kind of get on to some other questions, Rick, is that when I look at challenging times and talk about what it takes to really drive success, it's really in those tough times. And those tough times really expose character. And it's a big part of what Worldwide's about, and part of the DNA and the culture of Worldwide is that grit and that determination to grind through those really, really tough times and not give up. But I would also say from an individual perspective, tough times expose character, but also really successful times equally expose character. And those really, really successful times can create as much angst or can create other issues because of, sorry about that.
Well, you are running $1 billion.
That's all right, I just forgot to turn my ringer off. So no, all good, all good. But where I was going with that is that if you truly look at it, and I would think about this, and I talk about individuals, you need that grit and determination and hard work to be successful. But also when you do have success, think about how you handle that success. And that's where a lot of times that throws people and businesses off the track of success, because they let their success go to their head. They all of a sudden think they have all the answers. They start treating people differently. So if you think about the success of people in business, entertainers, athletes, I believe long-term sustainable success requires a level of humility and that level of appreciation for what it took to get to where you are, and the way that you act and behave when you do have that success and you don't let it go to your head. So anyway, I just ran through Worldwide in 32 years, so thank you very much. That was, no, I'm joking, yeah. I'm joking. So anyway, Rick, some really, really tough times in the early days, also fun times, but it was not a smooth glide path to where we are today. As some people may look at it and just think Worldwide just keeps going and going. They're just lucky. I guess they just, you know.
Yeah, real lucky, I guess. So Jim, I can testify to the humility. When I joined the company 7 years ago, the company was doing about $8 billion in revenue, and now we're in excess of $15 billion. But the humility was almost palpable. I mean, it was something, I was surprised. I was taken aback at how humble the leaders and the culture is here at Worldwide Technology, to the extent to where I was saying, hey, we need to tell people what we do. At the time we weren't really big on doing marketing. And so we've come a long way since then, but the humility remains. There are some folks in the audience and online that are running small businesses, successful businesses, medium-sized businesses. So what you're sharing with them is absolutely valuable. And even if you're working inside of a company as a director or leader, obviously you're going to learn a lot about leadership in this discussion. So you talked about the challenge, and that I can only imagine the challenge that was to basically fire one of the founders, right up front. And then we recently talked about some of the challenges that we faced over the last few years when you consider the global pandemic, a global economic downturn, the racial unrest, and recently a war in Europe. Leading through that is significantly difficult. But talk to us about how you started this company. You called it Worldwide, right? From St. Louis. You called it Worldwide Technology, right here from St. Louis. Obviously, you were casting vision, and leaders have to cast vision, but then you had to pivot, not just initially, but you had to pivot. How did you continue to grow throughout all the challenges that you faced for over 3 decades?
Yeah, I just had a podcast with, I think it was one of the Fox News people that was about some of this, and they asked, this thing around the vision, and did you have this vision, of growing this business? And what I told her was that, when I was in about 6th grade, I had this vision about where we're going and what we're doing and what I wanted to do as an entrepreneur and kind of build and grow this global company. And then I told her, I said, no, that's complete BS. I had no idea. When people say you have this great vision of where you're going and what you're doing, at a young age I had it, I'm like, no, I had no idea. And then same thing, Rick, when I go back and I look at the starting of Worldwide, my view is, we painted kind of this big picture of this name of Worldwide Technology. Well, my view is anybody can come up with a name. The name is not the hard part. And a lot of people, you can paint a vision. That's not the hard part. The hard part is actually doing the work and thinking through that model that gets you to that vision. So there's a lot of people with great ideas, like they talk about innovators. There's a lot of people with incredible ideas, but it's the innovators that can actually take that idea and turn it into a real opportunity or a real solution. So I would look at the same thing at Worldwide, and if I was giving any advice to people starting a business, I wouldn't worry about fixating so much on the name of the business. What I would focus on is really the fundamentals and the values and behaviors and the work ethic to really think thoughtfully about that. Are you prepared to do what is going to be required to try to turn that opportunity, that you have into this vision? And to your point, having a great vision I think is a great thing. So people that have those big visions, it's very important. But again, I think there's a lot of people with a big vision and great ideas, but just aren't prepared to put the time and effort into doing what they need to do to turn that vision into reality. So I would say we were a little naive, I actually think, in Worldwide Technology at the time. We're a little business in St. Louis, just trying to keep the doors open. But it has evolved, and we are a global player right now, as you know, and we're doing some very exciting things. So a little bit of luck never hurts either.
Yeah, so I would testify once again to the spirit of excellence that permeates throughout the culture of Worldwide. So to your point, casting vision is great, but the day-to-day is you have to execute. And it's in the execution that we see this level of excellence at Worldwide, to the extent that last night, several folks from high tech came up to me and were just commending all the Worldwide team members on how everything is just done here with the spirit of excellence. So that's part of the culture of Worldwide Technology, and that speaks to the execution. I'm going to give you a softball, Jim. So one word, give me one word. When you think about Worldwide Technology, 32 years, give me one word that describes Worldwide and why.
There's so many words that you could throw out there. I mean, it's really not a softball. It's actually a very difficult one. So I will give, if I had to give one word, I would say grit.
Grit, the grit, determination, and I think that.
See, but that's two words.
Yeah.
That's
well noted. All right, so.
No, I'm joking.
Let's transition to leadership. This is actually, we have people here that are leaders and aspiring leaders. Let's talk about leadership for a moment. I've been privileged to lead soldiers since I was 18 years old. I joined the Army when I was 17.
And thank you for doing that.
Oh, and thank you. So I've been serving and leading since I was 18. And in the Army, I mentioned General Farrell earlier. In the Army, we have a common lexicon, right? I mean, we have FM 22-100. We teach on leadership. Everybody has a common lexicon, common language, a vision, a definition of leadership, all of those things. And after serving in the Army for 25 years, I thought that corporate America had the same thing. I thought I was going to come to corporate America, and sure enough, every company has leadership training and leadership manuals and all of that. And I come to find out that that's not the case. But we do have that at Worldwide Technology. So we have something called at Worldwide IML, the Integrated Management and Leadership Curriculum, that was actually developed mainly by Jim Kavanaugh. So why was that important to you? Why was it important to you to have, and oh, by the way, when we hire even senior individuals from other companies, I'm assuming that they've been through leadership training, and as I walk them through IML, they go, wow, I've never had any training like this. So why was that important to you?
Yeah, it was very important to me for a number of different reasons. One, I enjoy reading and learning about leadership, and really, in reading and learning about reading, learning, and listening. I listen to a lot of audible books as people give me, and so different people have different ways of learning and comprehending things that are of interest to you. So when I go back, Rick, to that point, I would say some of the things that is fascinating that I remember going back and spending a lot of time on would be like Jack Welch with GE. And there was, a lot of leadership around Jack Welch and what they were doing with some of the leadership curriculum and principles and concepts. And you had things like Colin Powell and, that were different leaders that were really recognized. From a worldwide perspective, as I would take that and really watch different companies, different people, different sectors of business, and try to figure out how do you distill that leadership, some of those things around the important aspects of leadership, and distill it down into something that becomes very digestible, something that you can literally communicate to your employees and that they can actually learn from, and then not just like, okay, I understand it. It's just like understanding something is part of the process, but really understanding and implementing it into your daily activities is a total another step. And then also learning it and acting it and executing against it. It's just like learning something and understanding it is one thing. Getting up here on stage and presenting that is a whole nother level of understanding and incorporating it into your daily activities. So really the task at hand that I felt that we had as we were growing, we had this kind of DNA, as you articulated, Rick, that was, this is the way that we act and behave within the company. And it was kind of just known based on the employees that we had at that time. But then we were growing and we were adding more and more people. And it was getting more and more difficult for them to really understand what the values, behaviors, and leadership concepts were here at Worldwide. So that's really when we started trying to formalize this. And a big part, from my perspective and my belief even to this day, is kind of the art and science of how do you provide the least amount of information and requirements upon your employees that provide the maximum output. So the same thing with our integrated management and leadership curriculum. It's like, how do we build some really fundamental business concepts tied to the values and behaviors of what we expect that people can incorporate, understand, and then put into their daily practices of how they act, believe, not only from a business perspective, but from a personal perspective. And that was really the genesis of the integrated management leadership curriculum. And we've continued to modify that. And as everybody knows, this is one area of the business that I'm still very, very protective of, because what I don't like with organizations is that you kind of throw out the book of the month club. So there's thousands of great leadership books and concepts and ideas and things. But if you just the easy thing is to bring in consultants from outside that specialize in leadership, and they entertain, and quote, they don't educate and train so that your employees can incorporate and execute into their daily activities and how they behave. They entertain you for a couple of days. And so when everybody goes to the leadership events, and then they go away, and then 3 days later you ask, what did you actually learn? What did you take away in your incorporate? I don't know. I don't really remember anything. Well, that's where I'm like, I don't want that to happen. So what we did is built this integrated management leadership curriculum, and we had to, from a leadership and executive standpoint, had to commit to that we are going to continue to reinforce this, and we're going to build case studies out of that integrated management and leadership curriculum that people can really resonate with. Like, what does it take to have a difficult conversation? And we want our employee that's in the sales operations or in IT or in logistics or an executive, frame up a real life case study in regards to having a difficult conversation, and when your stomach has butterflies and you're like, I don't want to have this conversation with this employee that may not be performing the way or doing something, and you know what you normally want to do? I'm just going to avoid it and hope it goes away. And when people start to see it and they're like, wow, other people have this same problem. And you can get people to really understand that this is a critical requirement to be a manager and leader, to develop your employees, and that everybody has that issue. Then it starts to resonate like, wow, it is my responsibility as a manager and leader to lean into these difficult conversations and have these difficult conversations, because if you don't do that, you don't develop your employees. So anyway, some of those things are things that, Rick, we've obviously worked with, and you've embraced them coming in regards to how we train and develop our employees. And the one other thing I would say that I think is very important is we've had people that literally have come back and said, God, my God, when are we going to bring something else in? You know, when are we going to incorporate something else into this? And they're like the master's degree of our integrated management leader. First of all, those individuals, for the most part, were the ones that weren't even doing the things that needed to be done. And they were getting ranked as managers and leaders as like D's. You're not going to make it because you're not doing these things, and you want to go to the PhD version of this. So I'm like, these fundamental, foundational things are very important. But my point being also is you think about, you want to create a common language within your organization. If you think about where we are at Worldwide, you had employees, say, in St. Louis, and then we had employees in multiple states, and then we have people across the country, and then we have people around the world. Well, you want a common language around what do you expect of them in regards to the business concepts and how they manage the business, but also the values and behaviors. How do we want them to behave? So when everybody's on the same page, you move a lot faster. When they know what a business concept means and a value means and how we expect people to behave, whether you're here or in Amsterdam or Singapore or in New York or San Jose, everything kind of moves a little faster and is better aligned. So that's where I'd say it's not only the integrated management and leadership curriculum, the actual content, but it's the rigor and discipline that is required by the leadership and the organization to make sure that that continues to be reinforced as you have employees that leave the organization, and then think about all the new employees that come in. So Rick, you've been here for how long now?
7 years.
7 years. So think about Rick could come in and say, well, Jim, and he doesn't, I'm tired of it. I know it. But I'd be like, Rick, how many people are we going to hire in our public sector group? How many people are we going to hire in the company that have never heard anything about the IML, our business concepts, and our values and our behaviors? So when they get integrated and onboarded, it's very important that we make sure that we bring them up to speed in regards to the concepts and the behaviors and the values. And again, to get everybody on the same page so we can move as a unified team. So sorry for the long answer.
No, that was a great answer. It actually made me think about, because I know there are a lot of, I'm a son of immigrants. Both of my parents immigrated to this country from the Dominican Republic. I'm sure there are folks in the audience right now and then watching online who either immigrated to this country or are children of immigrants. And the word that I kept thinking when you were telling that story is the word my mother used to use, inculcar, to inculcate. My mother reminded me many times growing up in Brooklyn that I was born here, but I'm not from here. And so she was like, let me tell you something. This is how we're going to live. This is how, there's certain things you're not going to do, because I lived in a very rough environment. I was actually concerned when I came to Worldwide. The year that I joined, I think we hired 600 or 800 people. Last year we hired 1,000. I think this year we're going to hire another 1,000. And when you're growing at that clip, unless you have something like IML, then the culture is going to get watered down and you won't have a common language or lexicon. So since you have inculcated IML into so many people, and because people don't leave Worldwide Technology, we just come and it's an amazing retention rate. You have some folks at Worldwide that started as interns and that are now VPs or even EVPs. So later, Mike Taylor is going to come to the stage, and he's an executive vice president, started as an intern. So how rewarding, because
some people do sneak through.
Yeah, we did talk about that. So Mike and I don't know if Mike is in here. He just said sometimes people make mistakes.
We're not perfect.
Yeah, he's back there.
Where is he?
So from that perspective, as a leader, because a lot of what the folks in this room are doing as leaders is pouring into others, and at High Tech we talk about it a lot, pouring into others the things that have been poured into us. How rewarding is it as a leader to look around maybe your boardroom or to look around briefings, the ATSM, all these calls that we do, and you see people that started as interns or that started 20 years ago? How rewarding is that?
Yeah, it's awesome, Rick. It really is. It's I would say a combination of what you just mentioned, seeing not only the individuals that we have, like Mike and others that have come on as interns or really early in career individuals, and see how they have developed and how we have helped them develop collectively, but how they have helped us develop, you know, and bringing their ideas and thoughts. And then, you know, the other, I would say, 2 points to it is seeing things that are multi-generational now that we see happening. Younger kids, which I try to act like it's not happening, that I'm getting older and all of a sudden I see some of these, you know, younger kids coming in that are the next generation. But it's incredibly exciting, and you see the insights that they bring, and you see the individuals that really, you look at, to your point, were interns that are now executives and running parts of the business that is just incredibly rewarding and exciting. And then you just look at the overall growth of the business, and you step back and you see individuals in different areas. And you know, the only thing that disappoints me about it is that sometimes there's individuals that I may have spent a lot of time with years ago, and then I don't see them as much, but they're doing great things in different parts of the business. So, but it's, to your point, Rick, it's incredibly rewarding to see that growth and to see these individuals. And I will tell you, they have all earned the right to be in those positions. They have worked really hard, and they have demonstrated their ability to perform, both driving our culture and our business.
So I like to say that we're in the people business. I know that outside looking in, people think we're in the technology business, but at the end of the day, I think we're in the people business. So we talk a lot at High Tech and at Worldwide about mentorship. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of your mentors and the impacts that they've had in your life and career?
Yeah, I get this question asked at different times, and the way that I will somewhat answer, I don't believe I've had any like real formal mentors that have like, okay, I go meet with them and have coffee and we talk about these different things. I've never really had any. So I would say my biggest mentors, coming back, would be similar to yours, Rick, would be my parents, my mom and my dad, and both, you know, come from kind of middle-class families, you know, blue-collar work. My dad and was a man of very few words, and the words that he said, you did, and there were consequences. There were literal consequences of things, and I had no problem with that. I mean, it was very clear what I needed to do and my brother needed to do, and the same thing. So, and then my mom, who was also very strong, but kind of had that caring side. And as I've grown to be older, I've had a greater appreciation for my dad, whereas we're like, you know, I didn't want to, he was a stronger man than I was, so I didn't want to get my butt kicked, so I was very respectful. But anyway, those values that they literally said about work ethic and honesty and, you know, loyalty to your friends and your family and those things, those are still embedded into who I am. And I credit them to really the values and behaviors of the individual that I really am. And then when I look at other mentors that I have, I really try to take, like, there's so many wise people out there and people with great experience that were leaders or did different things. It's your opportunity and our opportunity to go take the time to research those. And I would also say that do understand nobody's perfect. So sometimes we get enamored with, oh, look at this leader, and you know, nothing's perfect. Everybody has their flaws. And so I also like to peel that back and see what are some of the challenges and maybe the flaws of that leader would have. And then the last thing I would say on that, Rick, is whatever you do, then you take those insights and those inputs and those learnings that you have and incorporate it into who you are. Because you shouldn't try to be somebody else. You should try to learn from the insights you get from other leaders and mentors, but not to be them, to be yourself. Because that's where you will shine the most, when you're doing it authentically, because that's who you are and not somebody else. So
let me ask you about culture, because we talk a lot about culture. I'm gonna give you a quick culture story of Worldwide. So I'm in uniform, I'm in the Pentagon, I'm serving as the CTO of the Army. Jacinto Santiago from Puerto Rico, retired from our office, came to Worldwide. He comes in to see me. As the CTO of the Army, folks like my boss, like Jennifer L., we couldn't say no to any company because we had to be equitable. So we had to give everybody 30 or 45 minutes. But that didn't mean that everybody was going to get access to the CIO. So they had to go through the CTO. So I'm like Tuesdays and Thursdays were my industry days, and sometimes.
Just by the look, it looks like you did not enjoy that.
Yeah,
so I was going to get in the.
Rarely, every once in a while, I would have a meeting, be like, oh my God, this is amazing. But a lot of them were not that way. So anyway, I'm going through the motions. I got Jay. Jay comes in. He says, hey man, I got a few slides. First thing I need to talk to you about is the culture of Worldwide Technology. I said, Jay, I'm the CTO, you know what I do. Let's talk about technology. He said, no, man, I got to talk to you about the culture of Worldwide Technology. I'm like, Jay, come on, man. I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have time for this. Like, I mean, I don't want to talk about no culture. I mean, I want to talk, like, what do you have? Like, I mean, what can,
he's got work to do.
Yeah, he was like, no, this is amazing, the culture. And I was like, okay, I just chalked that up to 5 years I was in the Pentagon. The only company that ever mentioned culture was Worldwide Technology. Then I came to Worldwide to interview. Rick, first thing we need to talk to you about is our culture. I'm like, what is wrong with these people? This is what I'm thinking. I'm like, but now that I'm here, like, I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm sold, right? I talk about culture all the time. So it's been stated that culture eats strategy for breakfast. What are your thoughts on that, and why do you focus so much on culture?
Yeah, absolutely. Culture, I think is such an important piece of any business or any organization. And, I will say that, starting Worldwide in the early days, I really had no idea what culture even was. The only way I didn't really think about culture relative to a business. I was thinking about culture was something, more that you kind of got out of a history book. It's like the culture of this civilization or the way certain areas, but I didn't really think about it like creating a culture within an organization, and it really is an important piece to do that. And I think if you can create a culture, and a culture at the end of the day, it's about your values and behaviors. I mean, that's what the culture is about. And so, as you mentioned, Rick, it is so important. We are in the people business. We just happen to be in the field of technology. So it is so important that we create a culture that is a magnet for talent, that attracts talent. And you do find a lot of technology companies that they're somewhat of a magnet for talent when they're running like a rocket ship, when that business, but soon as things aren't going perfect, all of a sudden that culture exposes itself for what it is, and it's really more about the growth and the options than it is really about the people and the culture that you have. So I think one, culture is very important to long-term sustainable growth and success within an organization, and that's really spending the time to think about the foundational behaviors that you expect your employees and you hold yourself accountable to. And I would think about that. And then think about, again, culture will also help you, as you mentioned earlier, Rick, that technology in the world continues to move at a faster pace than ever. And because of technology and digital transformation, things are happening even at a more rapid pace. So the real key to success is not going to be, I would say, just the one innovation of technology. It's going to be building a culture along with the leadership, that you're building a foundation that can continue to adapt and adjust based on new transitions that are happening in the marketplace, and you're continuing to bring the right people in that can do just that. So the last one I would say is that building that culture, it's just the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do to set within whatever your culture is, what are the values and behaviors that you expect and make sure that you communicate those, from the highest level and cascade that down throughout the organization, and just treat people well, and so that's a bit of our culture. If I could net it out is, be good to your fellow neighbor, whether your fellow neighbor is an employee or it's somebody in the community, it's a business partner, it's a customer, and that's, I would say, what we're at. But I will tell you, I have learned a lot about culture over the last 30 years as we've kind of built out Worldwide.
So one of the books that's mandatory reading for us, not Book of the Month Club, but actually one of the ones that made the cut, is The Advantage by Pat Lencioni. And in that book, I just want to testify real quick. So in The Advantage, Pat Lencioni talks about the smart side of the organization and also the healthy side. Most companies just really focus on the smart side, what we would call in the Army being technically and tactically proficient, but not the healthy side, like do people genuinely like coming to work? We have a culture of Worldwide Technology where people genuinely like coming to work, people genuinely like one another, and we have a diverse environment. So the term diversity, equity, and inclusion has been around for years, but like today it seems like it's a term du jour, right? Everybody's focused on it. But it's not something new at Worldwide. It's been part of our culture. Even before we had ERGs, this has been part of the fabric. So was that intentional?
It's a great question. I think we've always been an organization that is been very welcoming and inclusive, but I think probably what has, over the years, Rick, we've gotten more, I would say, intentional and organized around how we're communicating that effort and how we're collecting feedback, even with General Farrell, really kicking off a lot of the listening tours that we have and incorporating in any ERGs. But at the end of the day, I go back to, people are people, regardless of the color or where you grew up or where you came from. It's treating people with respect and also understanding that you as a leader, regardless of your success, as I mentioned before, you can learn a lot from people, and the broader, I would say, perspective of input you can get from people from different walks of life and different opinions, the better you're going to be. And especially when you look at where we are today, literally being a global company, we have a global opportunity in front of us, and that requires to really understand how the world works. And different people from different backgrounds, different countries, with the exception of the Dominican. Did I forget? We only have one, Rick, or is it? No, I'm joking.
I'll be there Saturday, so I'm going to let them know you said that. All right,
I know. No, I think we got Albert Pujols too, isn't it? No, I joke about that. But I really do think that's something that the world is a very, very large place, but the world has become somewhat of a small place also, where people are more interconnected today than ever. And the last thing I would just say about that is that I think it's just fascinating if you take the opportunity to sit down with people that you don't know, they come from different walks of life, and if you really sit down and ask them a few questions, like if Rick, growing up, where you come from, how did you end up in the Bronx, how did your mother move, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see some of the journeys that people have been through. And if you really sit back and you think about it, it causes you to sit back and reflect and say, wow, some people have been through some really challenging times. And, I do it at different times, and I'm like, wow, these are things sometimes that you think you read in history books and that. But at the end of the day, you can learn a lot, and that's where I think from Worldwide's perspective, if we can create that view, that mentality of one being a very caring company, but also one is a very open-minded and inquisitive company to learn about your fellow employees, and find it just to be fascinating and something that can be, I think, help you from a knowledge standpoint to really appreciate where people are coming.
You used the word intentional. I think that's a critical word. Admiral Mullen, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, did a 60-minute interview when the current Secretary of Defense, General Lloyd Austin, got selected to be the SecDef, the first African-American Secretary of Defense. And they showed a picture of when General Austin was on the Joint Staff, and at the time, and Jennifer knows this, I think there was something like 13 or 16 African-American generals on the Joint Staff when he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And then they showed it like present day at the time of that interview, and there were like 2. And they said, how do we go backwards? And Admiral Mullen said, well, one thing I learned a long time ago is that ducks pick ducks. If you're in a room and everybody looks the same, ducks pick ducks. And if you're not intentional, it's just not gonna happen. We've made the Great Places to Work list, and now it's called the Great Places to Work for All list, 11 years in a row. I know you already addressed it, but how intentional do you have to be to make something like that happen?
Yeah, I think it is something you have to be very intentional, but I guess I would caveat that, and I've communicated this just recently on our 7 o'clock meeting that we have with my executive team every Monday morning. We've been doing it for 27, 28 years now, and they love it. They love it. They just love it. But the thing that I communicated is that we have been, and we're very fortunate to make that list again for Great Place to Work. Said, but at the end of the day, it's not about making the list. It's about doing the right things for our employees. And there are some things, and I'll just be very transparent here, that where the world is, it's an interesting place, that social media at times can be the absolute wild, wild west. And it can be a platform for insights and constructive input, and it can be a platform for craziness. And I think you have to be careful as individuals and organizations to figure out how you use those platforms for good and for constructive input, and sometimes not. So to your point, Rick, I look at it that I truly said this to our executives, and I know our executives believe this and support this 100%, is that we always need to focus on doing the right thing for our employees and truly having executives and leaders that care about the physical and mental well-being of our employees and building career development plans and investing in our benefits. But at the end of the day, also I think organizations have to be careful that you're not going to be held hostage to social platforms. And because there can be just input that is just irrational. So my view is, like awards, when I look at those awards, I'm very honored, and I know our employees take great pride in them. But more important than actually receiving the awards and being recognized by Great Place to Work or Best Places to Work and different things, you know, on local level, domestic and international, is to make sure that we are truly doing the right things. Because I think some organizations, they focus on getting the award and being recognized, but not necessarily with the underlying fundamentals. Are you really doing the things that you need to do to support your employees? So that just so happens to be my belief, and it's one I'll continue to discuss with our executives. So not to say we will continue to focus on those, but I want to make sure that we're focusing on receiving those awards for the right reason, and we're not trying to game the system to be recognized. But then you peel that back and you look at a company and it's like, wow, they're really not a great place to work. You know, there's these things. And again, as we all know, you manage, you lead people, it's tough. You know, you gotta, you know, just when you think everything's going great and everybody is incredibly happy, then you get that email that says, oh my God, what happened? And that's part of managing and leading, and that's part of life. But I think if we focus on doing it for the right reasons, because we truly care about our employees, I think the awards and the recognition will come. But it can't be the other way.
Right. So last question for you, Jim, and then we may open it up for questions to the audience. You do pride yourself in worldwide technology on having a culture of innovation. To be innovative, it does require you to kind of slow down, though. You can move a lot faster if everyone in the room is a Caucasian male from St. Louis who loves soccer. Not that ever happened in this building at all. But no, when you have folks with similar experiences, similar level of education, similar cultures, you can move a lot faster, but you may not be innovative. Can you talk to how diversity lends itself to innovation?
Yeah, I think that goes to just about anything that you're doing. I even look at soccer. You bring up the game, the sport of soccer, which I love the game for a number of different reasons. When I played, enjoyed playing, but I think it's also a fascinating game because one, it is personally the most global sport in the world, and it is played everywhere with an incredible amount of passion and following. And just seeing the different players you look at, different styles of play you have from different individuals around the world, and the creativity and kind of stitching together teams that literally bring some of those aspects. I think the same thing applies in business, that you're trying to bring people with different ideas, different perspectives that can bring that creativity to the surface. And I would say that innovation, from my perspective, it's an art and a science a bit, and it's a little bit of organized chaos to a certain degree. So you want to have some structure, but you don't want to have too much structure. If you have too much structure, you start to smother the innovation. If it's just complete madness, people are running everywhere, and you're not necessarily getting those things to pop out of that. So my belief, one, Rick, I think we can do a better job internally. I think we do a good job, but I think with all the things going on at Worldwide, in the technology space that we're in, we've created this ATC, this technology innovation ecosystem that, if you think about it, we get access to all these OEMs, these big, the OEMs, the Ciscos, the Microsofts, the Dell Technologies, and then all the emerging, startups that come to us and say, yeah, we would like your product in your lab. So we've got all this technology coming at us, and then it's bringing smart people together with different perspectives, different industries, different geographic areas around the world. So to your point, Rick, I think it's really, really important, one, just for the company and innovation to bring different people with different views, different backgrounds, and then figure out how do you bring them together. And again, this kind of goes back to the values thing, that people need to have the values, and like one of our values is teamwork. So you can have some really, really smart, incredibly talented people, but if they don't want to work as a team and they think they have all the answers, they're probably not the right person for Worldwide. And so to be able to set that in a spirit of innovation as we bring those individuals in, because if you think about it, you want people with differing opinions and you want people to challenge each other, but it's that art and science of challenging each other and doing it respectfully without coming in and doing it in a way that you're trying to show that you're smarter than somebody else. So I would just say innovation, driving that innovative culture is really about thinking about it organizationally, but I think it's also a very, very big part of the values and behaviors that you have in the organization. If you can do those things, then I think we put ourselves in a better position to really being innovative, to really capture all those differing opinions, but in a way that's very constructive and productive.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great answer to that question. I think we're pretty much out of time. So what we're going to do, Jim, is of course, I'm a member of Worldwide, but I'm also a member of High Tech. So on behalf of High Tech, I would like to thank you for your time. Obviously, I think that this was tremendously valuable. Come on, if you think so, put your hands together for Jim Kavanaugh. Any closing thoughts, parting thoughts for the group here?
I'll be very brief. Just thank you very much for coming to Worldwide. Rick, thank you very much for bringing this great audience here in person, and anybody that's on the call. And we're very supportive. We look forward to learning from all of you, just like we're trying to learn, how to be a better company and how to create a more inclusive culture and organization that truly embraces the input of different people from different backgrounds all around the world. So I just want to say thank you very much for having me. It's been a joy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. So that was very informative. I'm biased, but I do think that was pretty awesome. One more time, put your hands together for Jim Kavanaugh.